Hello and welcome to this episode of Pixel Journey. Today's focus will be on looking back at the Pokemon games Sword and Shield. The games that were the first ones to come out for a mainland Pokemon game on the Switch that were looked at as terrible, the worst games to ever grace the Pokemon franchise. But now let's take a look back and see how they really compare, especially after the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So some of the rougher patches was definitely the graphics. Having transferred away from the original 2D pixel style that the Pokemon games originally started with and held through many games, all that's gone, and now you have full 3D worlds, and a lot of people have issues with these. It looks like maybe the team was not up for fully 3D animation, the graphics and everything. Something was wrong. Something seems to be missing. Even from back whenever the Pokemon started to become more or less realistic, they started to lose a lot of saturation in their models, and that became kind of a big thing that people disliked, and that can really be seen in the Sword and Shield models as well. A lot of them think that the Pokemon look lifeless, that they're the personality of the Pokemon that you would see back even in the pixel art is gone. Another issue is a lot of people, myself included, thought the story was a bit lackluster. It starts like any other Pokemon game. You wake up, your rival tells you, come on, we need to get our Pokemon. And instead of going to the professor, you actually go to your rival's brother, who just happens to be the current champion, and he gives you your Pokemon. So I do like that they tried to mix it up. That was nice. And Leon seems like a good enough character in himself. So I didn't have a problem with that. My problem is how linear the game is after. So it's basically you're routed through, and it's so very handholdy through the entire game. It'll lead you through paths. It says go do this gym challenge, and there'll be not a whole lot to do, if anything at all, to do in the cities or the routes. It's just the gyms, and you'll go and you'll catch your Pokemon, and you'll just do that until credits roll. It wouldn't be, I think, as bad if the game wasn't also so easy. I think everyone that's played it agrees this game is pretty easy because the amount of experience you get for all of your party with the XP share. And now that you can even get XP while catching Pokemon, I think that just makes it so simple. You can't even just go and catch Pokemon. So even if you just do your normal, you'll go catch Pokemon in the new routes, you'll fight the trainers in the routes, and that's about it. You're still gonna be pretty much on level or above when you go to the gym. And that actually scales exponentially. And by the end, you basically have to try not to be extremely over-leveled. So that it takes the fun away from it when you're just so over-leveled, everything's a one-shot. It also seems to, like, you don't have to strategize at all. So it kind of takes the fun out of doing anything. It basically, people just come up and they bring one Pokemon for the gym that has a weakness, and they'll just one-shot all of their Pokemon. So since we're on the topic of the storyline, there was no need for the side plot that included the legendaries to be a thing. That felt very shoved in when I feel like they were focusing on the wild area. They needed the gym battles, and then they just realized, wait, we need something to include to get the player their legendary Pokemon, and they just shoved the Chairman Rose story into there. It seemed very out of place. We're also back to, like, Pokemon seems to flip-flop about how dark it wants to go with these weird things, and it's also, this is the, like, first one that I can think of that the evil team that you're against, in this case Team Yell, is not with the bad thing that's happening. Team Yell's just following Marnie and cheering her on as she goes through her Pokemon League challenges. But Chairman Rose is working alone with his assistant, supporting him and just trying to destroy the Galar region, essentially, with all these Dynamax Pokemon. So that was super weird to me. I didn't really get it. It just seemed to pull me away from my challenges that I was trying to do, which does bring me on to a cool topic that I like. And they changed the like Elite Four structure. I did enjoy that. That was fun. That you had to go against like your rival, you had to go against Marnie, some gym leaders, until finally you fight Leon. So I did like that they were trying to change it up. I do wish they changed up more stuff before this too, because they were just the same gym battles, the same ones with like a little puzzle thrown in. Some of them were good. I liked some of them, and others were really, I felt like they kind of put a pin in it and then forgot to come back to it and just threw something in at the end because they needed to get the product out. But aside from that, I thought it was okay. This is still, at the end of the day, a game geared towards children, so I'm not expecting it to be super hard and like, you know, you gotta strategize for each gym. I just wish it was like a little less mind-numbingly easy. But I mean, there are some good things in the game, like the wild area. So this is the blueprint for never having to go with wild encounters ever again, which is one thing that I will praise about this game, because I hate wild encounters, whether it's in a cave, in like a long stretch of grass that I can't escape, or in the water. I hate random encounters so much. So being able to also see the Pokemon, it not only lets me hunt for Pokemon to fill up my Pokedex faster, hunt down Pokemon that give me good XP to level up my Pokemon faster, it also like lets you shiny hunt easier. So this is really good, and it also brings in the concept of co-op along with the raid battles, which we'll touch on in a second. But the co-op leads us back to the bad things, sadly, with its execution in the wild area. So if you want to play with a friend in the same game, you can see each other, but you can really only co-op in the raid battles. So basically, there's no good reason to have your internet on in Sword and Shield unless you're doing a battle, because it will tank your frame rates, things will move as slow as a slugma, and it's bad because there's so many people in your game. Just turn it off. It's not worth it. Save it for the raid battles, which are fun. But the Pokemon. This game brought in a huge controversy with Dexit happening in this generation, and personally, I didn't really care because it was less Pokemon for me to fill my Pokedex with. But a lot of people very much did care. They were very upset that their favorite nostalgic Pokemon was being ripped out of the game, that you couldn't catch them all anymore. And so this was a huge thing that the Pokemon Company didn't properly address. They had said, oh, we are removing these Pokemon in order to spend more time with the Pokemon that are in the game and make the models look better. But we know now that that was just a huge lie, because the models did not look that great. The animations, you're still just jumping in place. You're not connecting with any of the Pokemon. The way they worded it, we're removing half of the roster of Pokemon. That way you have an actual fight with the Pokemon. No, we're still in the same realm of they jump in place, and that's it. So people were very upset, especially when they learned that these models weren't even new. Some of them were taken from other games. So that really did not help Pokemon Company with mitigating this disaster. But one good thing is the Pokemon that they introduced with this generation were pretty cute. I mean, who doesn't love Yamper? So it was really cool seeing the wild area. You got the different effects. You got the different, it would rain, you could go in the grass, you could go in the water, there's a desert, there's Pokemon that are giant that you shouldn't run into. And it was cool because it seemed more realistic. You have lower level Pokemon in certain areas. I mean, obviously you can't go against that giant Pokemon over on the side because it's going to be like 30 levels above you. So it felt more realistic, and I do think that that was really something that they were trying to get ready for the next game, which we really saw with Arceus and Gen 9. So jumping back to the one good thing about the co-op with the raid battles, that was a neat system that they put into that they kind of worked on for the next one. So you just go to the den, you hunt down these Pokemon, and you can get Pokemon with good stats, so you can get extra stuff at the end of the battle. This is also the only time that you can actually play with a friend in the game. I didn't really use this feature much. I would do it sometime, like when I first was playing it, but honestly, unless there's like a really good one or like some event happening, you're not gonna do it that much. So it's kind of like, oh, this is really good for like when you're first starting, because you can get some really good Pokemon, but once you're done, you're done. So looking back at all of the things, I think that there are a lot of bad things with this game, because like obviously the huge upset with Dexit, the graphics not being really great, and there being no need to really push them into, we must make this 3D, and like the linear pathline with the not so great story, almost non-existent story. Like, I feel like we're kind of going backwards in that path, but there are some really great things, as the new Pokemon designs were pretty good. They seem to be, really trying to make that work. And the wild area, it might not have been great in execution, but it really kind of laid the building blocks for us to get a better version of it in the whole game in future games. So overall, I don't think that this game was as bad as people like to think it is. It wasn't great by any means, but it also wasn't terrible. I mean, it was a Pokemon game. Again, these are geared towards children. My nephews play these. So I don't think we can expect them to be as good as we make them in our minds. We want these really great Pokemon games, but with the amount of time the companies let these devs work on them, we're not going to get that anytime soon. But we can at least look and see the improvements that are placed in these games, and hopefully in the future we see them going in a really great direction, and one day we'll get our perfect Pokemon game. But overall, the graphics were 2-star. Dexit, I personally don't care about, but a lot of people were very upset by it. I thought the new Pokemon were great. The wild area concept was great. The raid battles were a cool concept that they added. The linear pathing of the story, and also really the lack of an after story or post-game content, kind of also made it suffer, because post-game content became a really important core concept for Pokemon games once they really started going on devices that could actually hold the amount of data needed to make the game happen. And then the difficulty wasn't great, but again, it's a children's game, and I feel like they're really starting to reset and gear towards children. So I think we can say that the games were okay. So let me know if you agree with me or not. Were the games good? Were they okay? Were they downright awful and just insult you to your very core? So if you are watching this on YouTube, comment your thoughts down below. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see other content like this revolving around gaming, click subscribe. We have a bunch of this gaming related content on this channel. And if you are listening to me over on Spotify and you like this, give me 5 stars, maybe even follow the podcast. But no matter where you're watching this from, I hope that you guys enjoyed something from this, got something out of it, maybe got a talking point to talk to your other Poke-loving nerd friend. And I also hope you guys have a lovely evening.